Hey y'all, Michelle Raza here with the Finding Yourself Book Club. Today we're going to continue discussing John Gottman's What Makes Love Last. We've been covering the 4 steps of attunement, which is the art of intimate conversation. Please do check out our website if you get a chance. We're at www.findingyourselfsatx.com. There you can take our free life balance questionnaire or just send us an email, either way, and your first consult is always free. Without further ado, we will continue. This is the last of the 4 methods of attunement in order to connect more deeply with your partner. What we've covered, the first is putting your feelings into words, which that, of course, if you have grown up in a dismissive household or of the dismissive parenting style, this may be very difficult for you. I highly recommend talking to a skilled therapist. We can also coach you through it if you would like. The second is asking open-ended questions, which for that I highly recommend downloading Gottman's card deck. My partner and I have been together for 3 years and we still use it all the time. It sounds so dorky and you think that you know everything about each other, but first, you're changing. Every day you learn and grow and things are new. And second, you don't always discuss those deep conversations with your partner, especially when you're in a long-term relationship and you move to kind of more the humdrum, logistical, what's for dinner, who's picking up the kids, do we have groceries in the fridge, those types of conversations. Following up with statements that deepen connections. So for this, we talked about Gail and Tim's conversation, ultimately talking about how Gail is doing her best to connect with Tim and trying not to put words in his mouth. So while she is reflecting back to him what she hears, she's trying not to tell him how he feels. So it's a very fine line. And I can tell you that my partner and I struggle with this because sometimes you do think that you know them so well, and so you can say how they're feeling, but that's not necessarily the case. So you want to work on asking open-ended questions and then following up with those deepening statements. Okay, and now we're moving into expressing compassion and empathy. When your partner is upset, be on his or her team, whether the issue is trivial or significant. If you think your mate is overreacting or should have a different emotional response, stifle the urge to offer your opinion and suggestions. I'm going to read this again because it's very hard. Stifle the urge to offer your opinion and suggestions. After years of studying couples who have maintained long and happy marriages, I can assure you that being the voice of reason is not always the best approach. Let other people play that role. Yours is to let the person you love know that you're standing with him or her. You get and accept his or her emotions as valid, because all feelings are. Monica is outraged that her older sister sent the kids Christmas gifts that they think are babyish. She sees this act as one more link in a long chain of evidence that her sister doesn't care about her and her daughters. We're just always an afterthought, Monica fumes. It's like she ran into the store at the last minute and grabbed the first thing she saw. She just doesn't care. Monica's boyfriend, Jonathan, is pretty certain that the sister, who is childless, is just clueless that crayons are not de rigueur in middle school. But he doesn't suggest this explanation or recommend that Monica call her sister and talk it out. Instead, he says, I can understand why you're so upset. She makes you feel like you're unimportant to her. That's awful. Jonathan knows better than to offer unrequested advice or an alternative perspective while she is upset. Now there's a few things here. First, it's while she is upset. So that doesn't mean that Jonathan should never offer advice. It means in the moment when Monica is upset, he just needs to be there for her. Also, notice what he focused on. She makes you feel like you're unimportant to her. That's awful. That is valid. The way Monica feels is valid. Even if her sister wasn't trying to make her feel that way. That's how Monica feels. So he's validating her feelings. He's not calling, I forgot, it doesn't say her name. He's not calling Monica's sister inconsiderate or, he's not berating her. He's instead just validating Monica's feeling. So at the end of the day, even if your partner is wrong, how they feel is how they feel. And that feeling deserves to be validated. So that's all he says. I can understand why you're so upset. She makes you feel like you're unimportant to her. That's awful. So very interesting, very complicated. It's very easy to read about this, but it's much harder to do in practice, right? It's like I said, it's a fine line between understanding your partner's feeling and then telling them how they feel, because then you'll get in trouble for that too, right? So just being there with them in the moment when they're angry. Maybe tomorrow when she's calmed down a little, Jonathan can say, let's pretend her name is Anne. Anne doesn't have kids. So I don't know if maybe she just doesn't realize. Do you think that could be the case? But not in the moment, because in the moment he just wants to be on her side. Likewise, Harlan complains that his power-hungry boss is threatening to cut his sales commission. His wife, Judy, doesn't suggest strategies for fighting back. Instead, she shakes her head in commiseration. I don't know how you can stand working for that man. He is dreadful. When her husband rants about wanting terrible fates to befall the guy, Judy chimes in with the macabre and absurd suggestions that bring a smile to her husband's face. Harlan's boss remains insufferable, but his wife's understanding makes tough times more bearable. So here, one of the things that Gottman talks about in relationships, the secret for making long-term relationships work are the repair attempts whenever you're having a fight. And one of the biggest things that you can do is use humor. And it's funny because, Judy chimes in to Harlan's complaint and takes it so over the top that it becomes funny. And she's not specifically trying to cheer him up or divert him. She's trying to show that she's on his side, but she kind of makes him laugh a little, and that helps him feel just a little better over the situation. It doesn't fix it, but it helps him. Although you've probably been tempted, don't offer opinions or problem solve until you've gone through all 4 of these steps. Ready advice sounds glib and insulting to many people. Are you saying I can't think of a solution? I'm not stupid. Remember Gounod's motto, understanding must precede advice. I would go even further and warn you not to give advice at all unless asked. Just being there and listening is an enormous contribution. So I know if you're at all like me, or if you're at all like my partner, it's really hard to hold that advice when you have it. It's very, very difficult. So I would say, Gottman says don't give it at all until it's asked. I would recommend just wait and make sure that your partner is in a place to be receptive to that advice. So if they're in the middle of being upset about something, that is not the time to counsel them with advice. Just be on their side, maybe write it down. I have a journal that I keep, and so I can always go back to. Write down what you wanted to say and bring it up a little bit later when they're not in the moment, when they're not so upset about whatever it is they're upset about. So that's all it takes to draw out your partner. Open up about your own feelings. Converse in a style that encourages confidences. And be an ally more than a problem solver. Follow this method in your daily interactions, and you'll be amazed at how much you discover about each other. Along with enriching your relationship, learning this approach will improve your skills at turning toward each other during sliding door moments. As a result, you'll prevent a lot of disagreements from ever starting. So, yeah, this is all really, really cool, exciting stuff. It's not so easy, but what I would recommend, and so practicing these 4 steps of attunement, I actually started. So you feel kind of shy, right? Like if you're learning a new skill, like if you've never drawn before, you don't want to show someone your drawings. But the way that he talked about that, I think his name was Glenn at the beginning of the chapter, practicing these skills on random people. They don't know you, so they don't know how you normally are, and they don't know that all of a sudden you're being more empathetic. They're just meeting you for the first time. And so practicing these listening skills on them and seeing what kind of reaction you get, that can be very rewarding, and it can give you good practice. If you're a little shy about taking this to your partner straight up and like them being like, who are you and what did you do with the person I normally deal with, right? You can practice in like just chit-chatting while waiting in line, or just making sure that you try and always ask open-ended questions. I know with COVID, people are more socially distanced, and people tend to be looking at their phones. But if you get a chance, like at work or just with strangers, to have a polite conversation, if you catch yourself about to give someone advice, just wait, right? And try not to give that advice unless somebody's asking for it. Those are all skills that you can practice on your own before even trying to have this conversation with your partner. So great stuff here. In the next video, I'm going to switch to talk about the stress reducing conversation at the end of the day, which for most of us, if you haven't been coached in how to have this conversation, can actually be a very stressful conversation at the end of the day. So we're going to switch to a different book, but I'll keep it in this playlist. I know I always say things, sometimes I'm thinking out loud, so you guys, I brainstorm with you. I'm going to keep it in this playlist because, I realize I can put videos in multiple playlists. So once I do that book, I can also put that copy in there. Of course, by that time, my hair will probably be totally different, and they'll be like, what is this random person doing in this series of videos? But whatever. Please do check out our website in the meantime. We're at www.findingyourselfsatx.com. Shoot us an email, text, or call us. We'd love to talk with you. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.